The San Francisco 49ers are at a fascinating crossroads right now, a moment where past identity, present urgency, and future planning are all colliding at once. This is a roster that still carries championship DNA, still has elite-level talent across key positions, but is also quietly transitioning into a new phase. And when you look at everything unfolding this offseason, from potential veteran reunions to bold free agency swings and looming draft decisions, it becomes clear that this isn't just about reloading. It's about recalibrating what this team is going to be. One of the most intriguing storylines revolves around the possibility of bringing back a familiar face in Jimmy Ward. This is not just a nostalgic idea. It's a strategic conversation about leadership, identity, and what this secondary actually needs. Ward, at 34 years old, is no longer the versatile, every-down defensive chess piece he once was. But what he still brings is something that cannot be easily replaced, and that is institutional knowledge of the system, an understanding of defensive communication at the highest level, and a professionalism that younger players often take years to develop. When former players like Patrick Willis and Dante Whitner weigh in on a situation like this, it matters. They understand the culture of the 49ers, they understand what it takes to sustain a winning locker room, and their perspectives highlight a deeper truth. This isn't about expecting Ward to come in and play 70 snaps a game. This is about whether his presence could elevate players like Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa, and Upton Stout. Because right now, that safety room is talented, but it's still raw, still inconsistent, and still searching for a true stabilizing force. And that brings up a larger concern. The 49ers have, for years, relied on a defense that thrives on cohesion and communication. If that back end isn't operating with precision, the entire structure can start to crack. So even if Ward's role is limited on the field, his impact off the field could be the difference between a unit that survives and one that excels. At the same time, there's another veteran storyline unfolding, but this one comes with much higher expectations and much bigger implications. The addition of Mike Evans is not just a roster move. It's a statement. This is a franchise saying that despite the changes, despite the injuries, despite the uncertainty, they are still all in on winning right now. Evans brings a completely different dimension to this offense. He's not just a receiver. He's a tone setter. A player who thrives in contested situations, who demands attention from defenses, and who has built a career on consistency at the highest level. And when someone like Luke Kuechly talks about Evans being ultra-competitive and driven by respect for the game, that speaks volumes about what kind of presence he's going to be in that locker room. This is especially important when you look at the current state of the 49ers wide receiver room. It's young, it's evolving, and in some ways, it's still undefined. Ricky Pearsall is expected to take a leap, but that's still a projection. Christian Kirk is on what essentially amounts to a short-term prove-it deal. And beyond that, there are more questions than answers. That's where Evans changes everything. He gives this offense a level of reliability that can stabilize the passing game, particularly in high-pressure moments. He gives the quarterback a target who can win even when the play breaks down. And perhaps most importantly, he sets a standard for the younger players to follow. Right around this point, if you're enjoying this kind of deep breakdown and want more analysis like this every single week, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay locked in, because this offseason is only getting more intense. Now, while the 49ers are adding pieces in free agency, they are also sending very clear signals about what they intend to do in the draft. And if you've been following this team over the years, you already know that patterns matter. Under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, this front office has shown a consistent willingness to invest heavily in certain premium positions, and that trend is unlikely to change now. Defensive line and wide receiver stand out as the most likely targets once again. And when you look at the current roster construction, it makes perfect sense. The defensive line has lost depth. There are questions about pass rush consistency. And even with the addition of Osa Odigizwa, there's still a need for a long-term difference maker off the edge. On the offensive side, the investment in receivers this offseason might suggest that the position is set, but that's not necessarily the case. Mike Evans' deal is structured in a way that doesn't guarantee long-term stability. Christian Kirk is essentially a one-year solution. So if the 49ers truly want to build a sustainable passing attack, drafting a receiver early is still very much on the table. But then comes the curveball. The possibility of drafting an offensive tackle like Caleb Lamo. On paper, it makes sense. Protect the quarterback. Invest in the offensive line. Build for the future. But when you dig deeper, the fit becomes much more complicated. This offense is built on the run game. It's built on precision, timing, and the ability of linemen to execute in space. And if Lamu is still developing as a run blocker, if he's still learning how to operate within an outside zone system, then you're potentially drafting a player who isn't ready to contribute in one of the most critical aspects of this scheme. That's a risk, a significant one, because while upside is always appealing in April, the reality of the NFL season has a way of exposing those developmental gaps very quickly. And for a team that is trying to contend right now, patience is a luxury they may not have. Then there's the situation with Jauan Jennings, which might be one of the most telling storylines of this entire offseason. Because this isn't just about one player. This is about how the league values certain roles, how teams manage expectations, and how quickly narratives can shift. Jennings bet on himself. He pushed for a bigger contract. He believed his contributions warranted a significant payday. And to be fair, there's a strong argument to be made. He's been clutch. He's been reliable. He's been a key part of this offense in critical moments. But the market hasn't responded the way he expected. And now, the longer he remains unsigned, the more complicated his situation becomes. Because the 49ers have already started to move on. They've brought in new receivers. They've created competition. They've built a roster that doesn't necessarily depend on his return. And that raises a difficult question. Is there still a role for him on this team? At the right price, maybe. But it's not just about money. It's about fit. It's about mindset. It's about whether both sides can move forward without the tension that defined their previous negotiations. Because the last thing this team needs is internal friction in a locker room that prides itself on unity. At the same time, there's a reality in the NFL that cannot be ignored. Injuries happen. Depth gets tested. And players like Jennings, who have proven they can step up in big moments, often find their way back into relevance. Whether that happens in San Francisco or somewhere else remains to be seen. What's clear, though, is that the 49ers are operating with a very specific vision right now. They are balancing immediate competitiveness with long-term planning. They are making calculated decisions about where to invest, where to take risks, and where to trust their existing talent. And as the draft approaches, those decisions are only going to become more critical. With limited picks, every selection carries weight. Every move has ripple effects across the roster. And every gamble could be the difference between another deep playoff run and falling short once again. This is a team that knows what it takes to get close. Now the question is whether they can make the right moves to finally get over the top. If you want to stay ahead of every move, every rumor, and every breaking development around the 49ers, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because this journey is far from over and you won't want to miss what comes next.